Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Donovan.
And I'm Jordan.
Join us as we go into the pages.
Welcome to this week's episode of Into the Pages.
Yes.
Or so I write this down.
Today we're going into Sixth of the Dust,
Six of the Dust.
which is in the Dromonad system.
Dromonad system. We're still in the Cosmere. I guess this whole Arcanum Unbounded is Cosmere.
Yes.
So
All of it is just we're kind of exploring all the places that don't have shards,
yes,
which are still super interesting places.
last week on the Thronendite system, there was no shard there. It was kind of affected by like a battle between Ambition and Odium. The Dromonad system, we're not sure how similar it is to that, but there is no shard. They do have, it's like an ocean, kind of seems like an ocean planet, or at least where our story is, there's just a bunch of islands that the people live on and work from, and there's the home isle, which is like where the majority of the people live, and then there's a group of islands called the Pantheon, which the way they talk about the islands, it seems like the islands either are gods to them or represent gods, or that's where the gods live. It's kind of unclear, but it does seem like they worship the island or the god the islands represent or something like that.
Yes, and I was wondering when I was first starting to read about that, are these islands actually gods? Do they have something looking over them that is a godlike thing? Or is it just like there's superstition?
I'm leaning towards superstition.
Yeah,
just because there's no
definitely.
shard, and the way the Cosmere works is usually the shards are the gods, and there's no other really godlike type thing.
Yeah, I think so too. But I thought it was interesting how he was just talking about he was going to make an offering to Sora, even though Patji was his like island or whatever.
Yeah.
But I still was just like, they're islands. But okay.
You do your thing.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Cosmere trivia.
Yes, let's dive into that.
The way that the intro has some interesting tidbits that kind of helps us understand a little bit more how I believe it's called world hopping works. World hopping is how people like Wit travel around to different planets, how they're able to get there, and they do that via perpendicularities, which is apparently when a shard resides on a planet, their level of investiture or power creates a portal of type where the spiritual realm and the physical realm kind of rub against each other and are close enough that you can kind of hop between. So normally if there's not a shard on a planet, there's no perpendicularity. But this planet does have a perpendicularity even though there's no shard. But it's unknown why.
So it definitely makes you wonder, has Wit been here?
Yeah. I don't know. Probably. He's been everywhere, but maybe not.
Right. All right, yeah. The Sixth of the Dusk. This was crazy place.
One other thing I want to mention, sorry. Because there's this one little sentence that I don't know what it means. But so it says, talking about the Dromonad system, that there's 4 planets in this Dromonad system. It says, this is unique in the Cosmere. Only the Rosharan system can rival it, which is where Stormlight takes place on Rosharan system. And there, one of the planets is inhabited solely by splinters. And I was like, what's a splinter?
I don't know. That is something we haven't learned about yet. But there is something in the same solar system as Roshar that is inherited by splinters.
I'm like,
And
what the heck?
I have no idea what that is, what a splinter is either.
I wonder, because my thoughts were, because in Stormlight, the Voidbringers in the Desolations, in between Desolations, their spirits would be banished to a different planet. Is that this planet? Are the splinters like their souls or something, and they're only there? Or?
That could be. That's definitely a theory.
Yeah, so I don't know. I like these little intros because it's just kind of like...
Yeah, I feel like I've gleaned a lot about the larger Cosmere from these intros.
Yeah.
Anywhere else so far.
Oh, and we also learned that the specific name, the name of the planet that we're on specifically is called First of the Sun. So that's where we are. And also apparently there's something called the Silver Light that is exploring places. I don't know.
Maybe that's Void.
Because it says expeditions from the Silver Light have not returned when they go to this planet.
And they're talking about the First of the Sun.
I think, yeah. which we'll find out why. 'Cause this is an intense place, to say the least.
Kidding. Oh, man. I already know this is the place I would be like, pass. I'll go live on Roshar.
Right?
I'm sure it's a pretty place and such, but dang.
I kind of was picturing, like, the Amazon.
Honestly,
like, islands.
super, like, at least the Patji Island is just totally makes me think of, like, totally, what did you say?
Amazon.
Oh, Amazon. Gosh.
/ Skull Island from King Kong.
Yeah, totally. Skull Island, Amazon, and freaking Jurassic Park. I got massive Jurassic Park feels from this, like, going through this jungle and stuff.
Yeah. And that's just the islands are super inhospitable, at least the ones in the Pantheon. It seems like there's one called the Home Isle where civilization is more able to bloom. There's cities, or at least a city, on what they call the Home Isle.
Yeah.
Dusk. So the main character in this story his full name is Sixth of the Dusk, or Sixth of Dusk, but
I'm pretty sure it's Sixth of the Dusk.
Sixth of
like
the
the title of this book, of this story, is his name.
Oh, okay. So yeah, but they call him Dusk.
Yeah,
it's kind of how he refers to him. And so we know who he is. But we're kind of following him, and the Sixth Dusk. I'll just call him Dusk from now on. Dusk. He's a trapper. So he's part of this small group of people. They're kind of like a religion, kind of like a kind of
feels like a religion.
kind of not, kind of explorers, kind of woodsmen, hermits, hunters, people who live off the land, just kind of all of the above. But they kind of have a brutal existence, you know.
Super brutal! Holy crap!
So they consider themselves, I'm kind of jumping ahead in this explanation, but they kind of view themselves as priests of the islands. Not like in the traditional way you think of a priest that's going and teaching of the religion, but they kind of more view themselves as caretakers, people who respect the island and who live on the islands and work on the islands.
Oh, they're like, dang it, there's some fantasy class.
Cleric.
No, not a cleric. There's like a druid. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. They're sort of druids. Druids, I believe, can be magical, almost like wizards, but
they're
not a wizard.
I think druids. I think these guys are very similar to druids, but they're not as. I don't know how to explain, because a druid is like cares about all living creatures, and they're like, don't kill any creature.
That's true. And then these guys aren't really like that.
And these guys, they definitely have that kind of like beaver trapper, respect the land, but they're
maybe they can be more considered like a mountain man. Like there's mountain men who still are around today, and they have a great respect for nature and wildlife, but they're not vegetarians. They're not vegans. They're not anything like that. They'll still be like, well, I need to survive, and unfortunately that means that deer over there needs to die so that I can survive.
Yeah, exactly.
Type of thing. So,
and this whole atmosphere and setup is like survival of the fittest at its 100%. It's like the definition of survival of the fittest. So kind of backing up a little bit, we're starting off. Dusk is on his boat. He has a canoe that he takes to Patji, where he traps and does some stuff. We'll find out exactly what he does later on in the story. And then he takes those wares or whatever he gets to the Home Isle and
and is there? I don't know if I missed this, but doesn't he live on Patji?
So he has what he calls safe houses.
But like, I didn't really put that together when I was reading through it. But maybe that doesn't mean that he lives in that safe house. It's just like if he is in danger, he's got a safe place to go stay, or if he gets caught there or something.
Because I know he specifically mentions that it's really foolish to make camp on the shore. So, at least not on the shore, but maybe if you're... And he does say later on it's also it's safer to sleep up in the trees.
Yeah.
Because all the predators walk, or at least the big ones walk.
Yeah. I was really disappointed by this. Maybe we could say this later, but he says most the big predators walk, and I was like, ooh.
I know.
Maybe we'll see something big that flies. But spoiler alert, we don't. So I was kind of sad about that, but not surprised since this is a short story. You're not going to see every little aspect of this island and everything.
Yes. And right off the bat, also in the first couple of pages, we get our first look at one of the major predators of this story.
Yes.
And what do they call? What does he call
They
it?
just refer to it as the shadow.
The shadow. So the shadow is this enormous. I kind of thought of the megalodon.
Yeah.
It's just this huge sea creature that is just death. Like it can swallow ships whole.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see it. Like you can see its shadow underneath the water, which gives me the creeps. Like
yeah, honestly,
so
I don't know
creepy.
if you're this way, but I think there's a name for it. But like, I am terrified of the ocean to some degree. Like, it definitely wigs me out when like I can't see, but I know there's something down there. I'm like, oh my gosh, what the frick is that?
Yes, I am totally that way. I feel like if I can like see generally, I'm doing okay. But like,
Yeah.
I've been in the ocean a couple times where I was like floating and couldn't touch the ground, and I was like, it's creepy because like sharks hunt from beneath.
Yeah, that's literally what they do. They literally dive down and shoot up. At least great whites do. It's good enough for me. Like, I'm gonna live right here.
Stay away from that.
But like, I definitely was like, I thought of the megalodon because great whites are quite big, but they'd have to eat you up in bites.
Yeah.
But the megalodon could swallow you.
Exactly.
I'm also going off of the movie The Meg.
Totally. That's what I was picturing this whole time. Is just this massive shark thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it probably wouldn't look exactly like a shark because it's not Earth that he's on. So,
Yeah.
but still, something like that.
Something like between a megalodon and what's that dinosaur? That's in Jurassic World.
I don't remember, but I know I know what you're talking about. It almost has like an alligator type snout.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
Because it can also jump. What I'm getting at is it can also jump on land and get something and then fall back into the water.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not. So
definitely
like
not
a
a shark-looking thing.
Yeah. I was trying to picture something huge. I thought megalodon, but anyway.
I wish I remember the name of that.
And
dinosaur,
we also get another look into what makes these predators so intense and scary is they don't hunt using normal senses. They don't use sight. They don't use.
Crap.
They don't use smell. They have telepathy.
What really scared me about this is like where with us here in this world, we have ways to disguise ourselves. We can paint ourselves. We got camo clothes, hats, and crap, and scent stuff, and we can hide behind bushes. But no, none of that would work against these freaking
because
predators.
they can literally sense your mind, and that's what they're looking for. They just go around looking for minds, and then they eat it.
Blows me away.
Yes, and so it seems pretty helpless. Like, how are you going to even get away with this? But there is an interesting solution. There is a bird they're called the AVR, and his specifically is named Cokerly. That they have this special power that if you're with one of these birds, these predators can't sense you.
Yeah, they hide your.
Yeah, but you're not 100% out of the clear because even though they don't hunt with traditional senses, they still have those senses.
Yeah, and
so they're just kind of they're not as heightened as the predators that we know in our world where they're like super hypersensitive. They're a little dull, but I mean, if you're sitting there hitting your paddle on the water, it'll probably still attract it.
Yeah, eventually.
So, and it's intense because this bird is the only thing keeping him alive from the shadow, and he doesn't have his wings clipped, and so he's worried that it's going to fly away.
Yeah.
He's like, please don't fly away. Like, oh my gosh. And he's even thinking, he's like, now I understand why a lot of people clip the wings so they don't.
I forgot about that part, but he's unique and he doesn't clip his bird's wings.
Yeah.
I wonder why he didn't do that.
I don't know. I would have, to be 100% honest. Or at least put it in the cage so it can't
Or like a leash
away.
or something. I've seen birds with leashes.
Yeah, something where they can't just leave.
Yeah, honestly.
And it's super intense. You know, it kind of goes up pretty close to his ship, and then it goes back down in the depths where it can't see it. And so it's kind of like, is he still there?
Yeah, and that would scare me more just because I know about great whites, but maybe things are different for him.
Yeah. And he's never seen one of these things. All he's ever seen is a shadow, because obviously if you see it, that means it's eating you and you're going to die.
Yeah.
But he like belatedly pulls out, he has a mask.
Yeah, so like their own little version of like some sort of scuba diving mask.
Yeah, it's like glass with like a leather around it or something.
Yeah.
And he puts it on and looks in the water.
I thought it was funny because he literally was talking to himself, just thinking to himself like, I never want to see one of these things. Then he puts his mask on and looks for it. He's like, what the crap?
Totally human nature.
Because then he kind of berates himself like, oh, why did I do that?
He's like, I didn't even want to see it.
Why did you do that if you want to see it? Why don't I get it? What do you do? I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So yeah, just right off the bat, we see just how you just have to be super cautious, super careful, even before you're on the island. And then the Patji itself is hard to get to anyway. So it just seems like a lot of cliffs, a lot of rocky shores. There's not really a safe place to land. And so he even has to float there for a little bit. And even though he's been there many, many times over the last, I think he said 10 years he's been working on Patji.
This also just made me think of Pandora from Avatar. Just because like that environment, since it's that one's a little slightly different because like they're newer to that environment than everything else is there. So like just everywhere you step could be a potential like death sentence. Like even the littlest things can catch you, and you just there he goes.
Yeah,
he's
seriously.
dead. So I just thought about because of how they talk about how that's like such a hostile environment. Like this seems just like you are going to be working night and day to stay alive. If you come here.
You can't rest for a second, or lose vigilance even for a second.
Yeah, honestly.
So yeah, he's finally able to come to shore, and then the first thing when he comes to shore, he sees signs of a wreckage or an attack, and then we kind of get a little insight. Apparently, when he was at the home isle, there's something vaguely called the Company.
Yeah, we don't know anything more, even if it has a name.
Yeah, and then the Company is really interested in expansion, and they want to set up forts on the island. And Dusk and the other trappers are kind of like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Like, you're gonna die. Like, in order to survive on these islands, he had to train for 10 years. So he trained for 10 years and then worked for 10 years, and he's still barely able to survive. If he even loses vigilance for a second, he'll die. And so he's picturing all these people that don't have that training coming and building a fort, and he's just like, you guys are screwed. Like, you're gonna,
honestly,
Patchi's gonna kill you.
This is the same thing. It also gives me like Jurassic Park vibes. Like there was all the people who were building the park, like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever, but then they bring that one scientist played by Jeff Goldblum, whatever his name, I don't remember his character's name, but he's like, oh, you guys are just idiots. Like, it's not gonna work, and blah blah. He's like, totally. That's how I kind of view Dusk, because he's just like, you guys are fools.
Yeah,
as he says several times.
Unfortunately, he's so isolated all the time, and he's so not used to human interaction that he has a very hard time articulating himself and speaking.
Yeah,
and so that he's viewed as a Tarzan type character, a barbarian, a barely civilized person, and is often treated as like an animal or a beast by these people that are.
He even sometimes does kind of talk like someone who's not as civilized, for lack of a better word, because to just be like, follow, up, open, or whatever. He just uses one word command.
And he even said that when he started talking, like it felt like gravelly and hard because it's been so long since he did.
Because he literally he's just in his head all day.
Yeah.
He doesn't speak aloud to his birds or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention this. So he has the one bird that's the AVR.
I was waiting for that to come up for when he first sees
his second bird.
Yeah. Well, we on the very first page of this story, we are introduced to both the birds.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I was just waiting to when does he first see what Sack does?
I think when he not yet. We're soon to there, but yeah. So he has two birds. He has Sock and.
So I listened to the audiobook and he actually says Sack.
Oh, Sack? I was like, there's no way this is Sack.
Sack.
Yeah,
at least that's how Michael Kramer says it. It could be Sock. Sock sounds a lot better. Like, oh, there's Sack.
Oh, I trust Michael Kramer's pronunciation over my own.
We could say Sock anyway if we don't want to say it and say Sack. We could just name this episode a bunch of Sack.
So yeah, Sack, who's always on his shoulder. Sack who's always on his shoulder, and then Cokerly. So he has these two birds. So anyways, yeah. So he's on the beach, and he conceals his canoe, and we find out, based on what he's thinking while he's doing this, is that the trappers are very territorial, and what's the word I'm looking for? Rivals.
Yes.
But like intense rivals, where they're not actively trying to kill each other, like they're not going to war, but they set traps and that are designed to kill you if you're stupid enough to follow
and he
them.
mentions in later that if like he wouldn't he mentions something along the lines where like, he wouldn't go after someone if someone like entered his territory but then left, he would leave them alone. But if they continued in his territory and intently kept coming at him or towards him or deeper in then he'd go after the person and kill him.
Yeah.
So it sounds really weird, but also super intense.
Yeah, so not only do you have just a treacherous island that's just you have to be really careful of and constantly trying to survive, but you have people who are super knowledgeable of the island that are also trying to kill you. There's this rivalry, and they're trying to kill each other essentially because I guess they doesn't really give an explicit reason why. It's just he always says that's just how it is.
I wonder if it's just because the typical reason, like they're there to, they're not just living there, and they're not just, they're like there to do a job, and their trapping is their trade. That's how they survive and make a living. So I wonder if
I think that's the reason, but like his reason and why he does it, at least what he tells himself, is that's just how it is.
Which is I hate those kind of excuses. That's just how it is. No, just because that's what you were told and that's what you believe, that's a load of crap.
Yeah, seriously. So the canoe's concealed.
Not only do they like try to kill each other if they go into their other territory and they set traps to each other, but like if another trapper came upon his canoe, he would just take it. If it didn't wasn't trapped and didn't kill him or something or whatever, he would take it.
Nice, got a new canoe.
Yeah, I think that the trappers / I call them mountain men in our world are a lot more courteous than that. They don't try to kill each other. They don't try to. They'll help you out, and they also won't do stupid things like steal other people's property. Anyway, yeah, but this is where we learn. So he's got 2 birds, and his first one, I'm not going to be able to say this name unless I actually read it.
It's like Cokerly or something like that.
Oh, I know it. You said it right, but yeah, his first bird protects his mind. Conceals his mind from the predators, but his second bird is much more scary.
Yes, it has a very unique way of warning him of imminent danger. Very helpful in the jungle where everything's trying to kill you.
Yes,
but also kind of disconcerting.
It's like a horror film.
Is the way she warns him is she'll project an image of his dead body over where the danger is.
Yes. Actually, I think it showed this. This was talked about when he was pulling up in the canoe. I totally forgot this, but he saw his body floating in the water.
Oh, that's right.
And he's always just been like, I just need to stay away from that place because his body is always floating in that water over there.
Yeah, and
I was super confused at first because it's like, does he just have like a fake body out there that he's just like warning?
Yeah.
But then you read farther and find it like, it's Sock projecting like, oh, if you go over there, you're gonna die.
Yeah, so it's like, and he's like, I don't know what's over there. Like maybe there's a thing I'll step on, or maybe there's like something over there, or there's like a tide that will drown me, or like he doesn't know what it is. He just knows that if he goes over there, he'll die.
Yeah, something like that.
And that's also how he finds the hiding place for his canoe. And I'm remembering because he's pulling it in, and then he sees his corpse hanging from vines. And then apparently there's a type of vine that if you get too close to them, they come down and they grab you. They're like poisonous, and they just kind of absorb you, kind of like just like the plant eats you. But so he throws a rock at it to make the vines fall down, and then hides his canoe kind of near those, and kind of views it as an experienced trader will see those vines and not want to go near it, and thus won't find his canoe.
Yes. So that's just where the people from the main island. That's just where the people from the main island are just gonna keep walking, like, oh, just vines, and then they'll be dead. Yeah. Then a real person's dead body will be the one warning people to stay away.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's just like super morbid. I think I think it kind of talks about how detailed it is, but I always kind of pictured it like he sees, like, it looks like his actual body is there.
I think it does.
But then like,
and it's like killed in the way that the danger would kill him. Like, he saw it hanging from vines, he saw a drowned body.
Exactly. But then, like, what's also super interesting is, like, if he prevents the death or avoids the death, it slowly fades away.
Oh,
which I thought was just kind of interesting. Like, so it can look not as real, I assume, to him, because his body will become more transparent or whatever. But it's still like, I can't imagine that. Imagine like you get mauled by a lion and you could see your dead body after the lion. Be like, what happened? I'd be scared, but I guess he's used to it. I want to know what happened when he first got this bird and was just like raising it or whatever, and then like, why am I seeing my dead body everywhere? What the frick? Which also we didn't mention this yet, but we kind of know what this is now. But at the very beginning of this, there's an art drawing, and it's just of him, his body everywhere, just dead, and his horrified look. I'm like, oh, I feel the same way.
Yes.
But now we know why. It's because like this bird shows him like how he's gonna die.
Exactly. Yes, and up the beach he discovers a site of what looks like home isle people trying to build a fort that miserably failed. They got attacked by a shadow, and there's just debris and wreckage and what appears to be no survivors. And he's like, this is what I knew would happen. Just thinking
And I don't know when this happens, but he does discover that someone survived.
Happens pretty soon. So he's checking for survivors, and he notices a path cut into the jungle that's heading towards one of his safe houses.
Yes. And this is where we also learn where he's got some other little critters helping him out besides the birds.
Yes. This is when we find out a creature called Meek, or Meeks.
Oh, Meekers.
Meekers. And I pictured them as little rabbit-sized mice.
They were I didn't think they were that big, but I don't remember. But he does describe them as like mouse-like creatures.
Yeah, and they come up and they telepathically project the word food to him.
Yes, that's insane.
Right.
Like, okay, so we know that the predators hunt by sensing your mind, but now we learn that these little rodents can actually ask for food with their mind. Holy crap. Yeah. That was insane to me.
And it turns out these are quite deadly creatures. One bite from them and you're dead.
Yeah. Lucky for him, he's trained them to bite others.
Yes, it's kind of funny because he kind of mentions the Meekers. They're dangerous, but they've gotten used to human presence because of the trappers, and so they don't usually go after you. But he's, like you said, he had an idea to train these ones where he feeds them and has this deal that they don't bite him, but whoever else they'll see, they will bite. Yes. It's kind of cute.
So there's only 3 words they ever really say to him. First of all, they'll like ask for food, and then second of all, they'll be like, bite others. It's
like, you give us food and we'll kill anyone else.
Yes.
And then he sets a trap of his own. We kind of mentioned traps, and he puts mating feathers, which is feathers that these AVR, which are very valuable birds because they hide you from super dangerous predators on the ocean and in the islands. He puts them right above the nest of these Meekers, and so kind of hoping that someone will see them and go towards them and then get bitten by the Meekers.
Jeez, it's like this place is already so hostile, but if there's trappers there, you just know that they've set their own traps. Like in our world, trappers just means like, oh, they trap rabbits and whatever. But man, these guys trap humans too.
Yeah. And it's at this point where we mentioned earlier, he sees a path cut into the jungle. He sees several different paths where it's obvious that people were panicked because of their being attacked by this huge creature.
Yes. And
ran into the jungle. And he's like, oh, they're all dead. But he notices one going in the general direction of one of his safe houses. So he's like, I'll go that way just to, make sure that they don't make it to my safe house.
Yeah.
And he follows it, expecting to find a dead body at any time, but doesn't. And actually, he kind of goes through the forest. We get a little flashbacks of his training. Apparently, the training of a trader happens on one of the less dangerous islands called Sori, where you train for 10 years, I think it was. And then you choose an island that you're going to trap, and he was trained by his uncle very thoroughly. And then we learn about a bunch of different dangers. There's dangers everywhere. There's ants that can bite you and you'll die. There's different plants that have poisons, and so he's wearing thick clothes, boots, long sleeves, just to make sure that he's not brushing against anything or getting bit by an ant or anything. So. And just like every step he takes, he has to walk slow. He has to make sure because the ants are hidden in mounds. And every once in a while, he'll see his corpse projected by a sock. And so
The ants definitely would scare me one of the most because how many times can you remember us growing up and sitting somewhere and be like, why do I feel this like thing? Like, oh man, I said an anthill, dang it. And it's like, it's so easy to miss. And like these ones don't even like build those what we would call an anthill.
They live underground, and usually once they live there, you can just tell because it's like a little mound with kind of maybe like a crack where they come out, and if you step on it, they just swarm you and kill you.
Yeah, gosh, and like one bite from one of those little ants. Like what the heck?
And he actually almost dies.
Yeah.
He's walking, and Thok barely warns him in time, and he jumps back and realizes that he had stepped on one of these mounds that he didn't see, and. Luckily, he jumped back in time. The ants swarmed out, didn't see anyone, went back in their hole.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. But it's like it is pretty morbid. I still think that he sees his dead body everywhere, but it's probably super helpful, and like he's got a really big leg up on all the other trappers in this island.
Yeah, and he even thinks that he's like this is really nice to have. It saved me a bunch of times, but I can't get complacent. I can't rely on it. Like I still have to. Be careful.
Talks about losing his skill and such if he gets too reliant on it or whatever.
Yeah. He's following along the path, and the whole way there, he's not seeing a dead body, so he's getting more concerned. Like, they're getting really close to my safe house.
Yes, and then he gets after traveling, I don't know how far his safe house was, but he travels far enough to where he finds his traps, and he finds they've been cut. He had like trip wire, and they've been cut.
He had several layers. He had ones that were like meant to be obvious.
Yeah, but then like the ones that were not obvious were even cut.
Yeah, and he's like, "What the heck?" Even.
Yeah.
And then he goes further in, and then finally one of his traps worked, and he finds a woman suspended in the air by vines that apparently when they touch you make you numb.
Oh yeah, that's right. Seriously, can you even touch anything here? There is nothing in this place.
Like, even if it doesn't kill you, it'll incapacitate you and something else will kill you.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, and there's this woman, and he can tell that she was part of the camp. She's the one that ran. And she has an AVR with her that's wounded. Has like a bandage on his wing and is having a hard time flying. And he recognizes her. She is from the company.
Yes.
And is one of the people he talked to and tried to convince that building.
Yeah. Did we mention that before? Like, he has actually met with this company that wants to expand to Patji, and like he's trying to convince them, but they're like, and yeah.
Oh, and also we forgot to mention this. He assumes, because he sees from the tracks that the person is small and light, and he assumes that because they're doing so well in surviving the jungle, that they're a young trapper that's not quite fully trained yet, maybe about 16 years old. And,
yeah, one that's still.
And I think we get an insight of why he was talking to the company, because he's like, oh, they finally found a trapper to guide them, and it was a young and experienced trapper instead of a older one.
Yeah.
And so he assumes that he's going to find this a young apprentice trapper. Instead, he finds a woman, and he's pretty surprised. He's like, well, "How did you even do this?" Like, he's not expected at a home islander, a city slicker, essentially, to be able to survive not only the jungle but to detect and survive his traps. And he's like, "How did you even like get here? Like, who told you about my safe house?" He's like, "Because there's no way you could just stumble upon it, deactivate my traps."
Yeah.
And then she kind of makes up this BS excuse. She's like, "Oh, I would just went this way, and when I saw traps, I figured I was close, and I just needed help from someone I figured a trapper would do, so I came here."
He was almost convinced that like someone was actually out for him, and this person was sent to find him or something. But it was just like she was attacked by a shadow and was trying to survive. She went for help and was looking for help.
Yeah, exactly.
And got lucky, in my opinion.
Essentially. Yeah, but yeah, he's decides to be nice to her, not kill her, and he lets her down and takes her up into his treehouse.
Yeah, and she's pretty adamant too, which this gives us a little hint at what he is a trapper of. But that she says several times, like, "I promise I'm not here to steal your birds." And like at first, I was thinking like he was
like the birds with him.
The birds with him.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Cokerly,
gosh.
But yeah, it turns out what they trap, in quotation marks, is AVR. So AVR can bestow talents. They have that investiture, that ability. For example, Cokerly's talent is concealment from predators. Sock's talent is warning you when you're going to die by showing your dead body.
and it seems like... so after talking with this lady, I don't think we've learned her name yet, he lets her down after a minute, And yeah, learns a little about issues with the company and blah blah blah.
Yes, they go up to his treehouse, and he has her look around to make sure that she shake out the blankets, check the cups, make sure there's no bugs or spiders or anything like that. And then he goes and checks on the roof, and on the roof he has a couple of nests of aviar that he's raising. So he has breeding pairs, and whenever they give a hatchling, he raises that for a little bit and then takes that hatchling to market and sells it. And that's his job. That's what all the trappers do.
Yes, but he does a little differently because like he mentioned, I was thinking that like other trappers just trap the birds, but he traps and breeds.
Yeah.
So he maybe makes a little more money or whatever.
Yeah, I think later on we discover that I think all the trappers do that.
Oh, I thought he was the only one.
When we get there, we'll talk about it and see. Maybe I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, and then she's like, she's like, oh, you don't trap them, you breed them. And he's like, F. Because apparently it's like this big secret. He's like, dang it. And she's like, you can't stop progress. Like, progress is going to happen no matter what you want.
Oh, yeah, because she's like this whole time trying to argue that, like, expansion is going to happen and you can't stop it.
Yes.
Like, he's just like, y'all are fools.
And it turns out a big motivator for this expansion. It's just the normal motivators you have, a company, they want to expand, get greedy, whatever. But then they also have what they call, what do they call them? Outer worlders, those from above. What do they call them?
Something about the ones from above. And the ones above. So I think just the ones above.
The ones above. So the ones above have come to this planet, and they have really great technology. They have ships that can fly. They have technology that can pinpoint and track down AVR, and that seeing this in their technology, and they're refusing to give the technology or trade anything with the people on the first of the sun, because apparently they have some law that you can't trade with underdeveloped planets.
Yes.
And so they're like, we need to develop, we need to expand so we can.
Yeah, the company is just trying to like push that forward so they can trade with the ones above sooner. And we do learn her name. It's Vati.
Vati. I knew it was something like that. I was going to say Vathi, but I was like, it's like close, but I don't think that's it.
Yeah,
Vati.
I would have said Vathi too, but again, I listened to the book and they omit the H.
Oh, okay.
It's Vati.
Vati. Apparently that's a very untraditional name. Normally how they name you is they name you what number kid you are, 6, like 6th of the dust, and what time of day you were born. So if your name is 6th of the dust, that means that you're the 6th child and you were born at dusk.
Yeah. Which I thought this was funny when they were talking to each other, because like when he says his name, it's like, my name is the 6th of the dusk. And she was like, that name's very descriptive. And I love what he said. It's like, what a stupid, meaningless comment.
There's even several times where like she'll make comments and he's like, that wasn't a question, so I'm not going to answer.
Yeah.
And she even asked so many questions. He's like, can't she take some time and try to think and like figure out the answer before she has to talk to me?
I wanted to say he said, what a meaningless comment. Why do some home Islers feel the need to speak when there's nothing to say? But that was hilarious.
Yeah.
What a meaningless comment. And so they kind of just go about their time, and like it seems like they're getting ready to go to bed. He had her check
so one of the cardinal rules is don't travel the jungle at night, because that's when the big predators come out.
So and it's night when he finds her. It's dusk. But something really unusual happens, which is super unusual for us, but even more so for him. And he suddenly sees his dead bodies everywhere.
Before that, something happens, and all the birds in the jungle, the birds on his roof, Sock, Cokerly, all just start freaking out. They're like flapping wings, they're squawking and calling, which normally they're really quiet at dark. And then so after that, and then
that's where he sees.
Then he just sees and it's freaking him out, because he's so used to when he sees his corpse, that means danger's happening. So he's like jumping all over the place trying to avoid supposed danger before he realizes that something's wrong with Sack. And there's technically no immediate danger.
Yeah.
And so he's like, what happened? What did your people do? And she's like, we didn't do anything. And he's like, bull crap. Like,
Yes.
what did you guys do? And she's like, well, we have this machine that we essentially stole from the upper world people that can find all of the AVR and mark them and then print out a map.
Oh, and actually, I totally forgot about this, but I think before she talks about that, she has a smaller machine, she calls it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
like how she found Dusk's safe house is because she was following the map to his AVR that he had there.
That's right. Yeah, I
forgot about that.
Yes,
and so he kind of already was talking about that. And like, I'm pretty sure he didn't like it, but then he learns that they've got an even bigger machine somewhere in this camp that the company is setting up on the other side of the island that is going to mark where all the AVR are.
Yes, and apparently, and they think they turned it on because all the birds just freaked out. And she's like, well, we were scheduled to turn it on. She's like, I can't believe they did it without me. But yeah, so what's scheduled to do tonight? And it kind of hints that she's important because she's like, the captain would love me to not have survived like I did. And they probably moving on without me, dang them. It's like, so it's like, okay, is she like a lead scientist or something, or a high up scientist?
Yeah. Or he keeps referring to her as like a scholar or something. Was that what it was?
Yeah, just generally, he's like, scholars are always writing notes and taking pictures.
So maybe
like,
she's not technically a scholar, but she sort of seems like a
he
scholar.
He views her as a scholar, yeah, because she asks so many questions, and he's surprised that she survived. He's like, a scholar shouldn't be able to survive because they just are stuffed in their windowless rooms with their books. They don't know how to survive on the islands.
Yes.
But yeah, it really freaks him out because he's like, we have to stop them from activating the machine again in the morning.
Yeah,
because he's convinced that if they do, they're all going to die.
Yeah.
Something terrible is going to happen.
Which makes me think like maybe he doesn't think that there was something wrong with Sock. Maybe he just saw all these deaths because of this machine.
Yeah,
sure.
like it did something to Sock to just make her totally freak out and just project death everywhere. And he trusts that so much that he interprets it as in the machine equals death.
Yes.
And so you need to deactivate it, destroy it, don't use it again. And so he makes the very stupid decision normally to travel at night to make it to the beach by the next day to tell them not to do it.
Because that's just because Vati was saying that they're scheduled to turn it on.
Yeah.
And she suspects maybe that was just like a test or something. This was kind of implied, I can't remember, but
and so, yeah, Vati is even like, we shouldn't travel at night. And he's like, we're going. And she's like, I'll wait here. And he's like, no, I need you to be with me to tell them to not turn it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they go. And as they're leaving, they hear
Yes.
like, in the distance. I don't know what the heck it is. A call of a predator.
I know that was a terrible impersonation.
What is that predator called? I forgot what it's called.
Night moths.
Night moth. They hear a night moth off in the distance, and it's kind of like, ooh, but they're like, we'll be fine with our coke. We'll have Cokerly and Sock. They'll mask us. We'll just have to be quiet and move quickly.
Yes. And I don't remember when it mentions this, so I hope it's not. But they mention / Dusk mentions just in his thoughts that like most of the other predators are pretty deaf, or they are deaf and are almost blind, but there are still some that can hunt with sight and smell. They're not completely reliant on sensing your mind.
So it's just like no way away from these creatures.
Yeah, honestly, goodness. The ultimate predator for real.
So yeah, off they go. And it's night. The jungle's just as dangerous. They're being super careful. And as they're going, he notices that Vati has this weird tube on her backpack, and he's like, what is that, like a map container?
I think they even mentioned it because like he sees her take out a spear, and he's kind of just like, that's not going to do anything. That's not going to... Their hide is too tough. You're not going to be able to kill something like that.
Yeah, but he doesn't quite understand quite what it is.
He's definitely... This is making me think back to the Frugal Wizard. They're talking about that one city somewhere in the U.S. that is so far behind the times. It takes him 2 or 3 years to catch up to technology or whatever. But like, he's kind of the same way. He's so isolated that he doesn't know what technological advances are being made. So he's just like thinking, idiot girls. Spirit not gonna do.
Yeah, so they're going along. More questions are asked. He's getting kind of annoyed.
Oh, I
then
totally
he
forgot. Like,
saves her from another trap.
I forgot that he, in order to convince her to have the people turn off the machine, he has Sock show her what he saw.
Oh, that's right. So Sock goes to Vati's shoulder, and
yes, and then I assume she saw her own corpses everywhere, which has got to be horrified. She was horrified. I mean,
I'm sure it looks pretty realistic.
No kidding.
So yeah, they're going, and then they come across as they're going, they see some mating feathers on a bush, and Vati's like, "Ooh, look at that!" And she goes to grab them, and he's like, "No," because he knows it's an obvious trap. She grabs them, and he kind of throws himself in front of her, and a spike thing comes down and impales his arm, and he's like, gives her the "you're an idiot" speech, and you're barely survived. Like, you need to think. Like, you need to think. Like, if something's too easy, it's probably because it is, and it's a trap or something that's going to kill you. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And he's like, "Don't be sorry. Be careful." And then they kind of bandage him up and continue on the way. And Vati gets a little lesson on the brutal life of a trapper. Like, the jungle's trying to kill you. Other trappers are trying to kill you. It's just all around everyone trying to kill you.
And a few other things that we can get into. When she saw what Sock had to show, she was not only surprised by seeing so many of herself dead everywhere, but she's never seen that talent given.
Oh, that's right.
Bird.
She's like, "You discovered a new talent," and then she's kind of making all these connections. She's like,
"Yeah." And not only that, is like she's surprised. So he has 2 birds. Apparently, it's like either uncommon or not heard of at all for someone to have more than 1 bird.
Yeah, he says, like, "My uncle had 3.
Yes. I want to know what his birds did. Also, I want to know what other talents these birds give. Besides, because we only know of 2. They protect you from the predators. They conceal your mind from the predators. And Sock tells you, you're going to die. And that's what it's going to look like.
Which apparently is not one that's known.
Yes.
So she's starting to make all these connections. She's realizing that there's something about Patji that gives birds these abilities. And they kind of knew, because only birds that come to the Pantheon have the abilities to give talents. If you have a bird, you can have the same exact species, but you raise it outside of the islands that are in the Pantheon, then they won't have powers, they won't give talents. And so they know there's something about the islands. And then she realizes...
Isn't it... I thought it was just Patji that did it.
Well, we don't know that yet in this story, this part of the story yet. They just know that the birds migrate to the islands, and then that gives them power.
Is it all the islands, or
that's
just
what they think? But later on, we figured out that it's just Patji that gives it to him.
Okay, I'm just confused because you're going through the story as we're reading it, and I'm going.
So then she's making these connections, and she realizes that it's not necessarily the bird, it's the islands, because Sock is not an AVR, but she has a talent. And then until she realizes that if you bring probably any bird to the island, somehow it'll gain a talent. She doesn't know how yet.
Yes.
Dusk knows, and he's trying to keep it a secret because he doesn't want the island to be colonized, essentially.
Which I think is kind of funny because at this point he's still, well, as far as I know, they'll always believe it. It's not anything convinced him otherwise, but he believes, Patji is a god and that he just likes to murder everyone.
Oh yes, there's one line I thought was really funny. Actually, I want to see if I can find it. Dusk thinks, "Oh, how the father loves to murder his children." It's like, geez Louise.
Gosh, like we've seen so many things where like just all the gods of Brandon's books just hate the people they are gods over. Like, good craminy. I don't want to be under these people at all ever. Oh, and I love how we just see see more of her Vati's like ignorance / city slickerness, whatever you want to call it. Because she's just so nervous about the night maws as they're traveling. He's like, what if they're watching us right now? And he's just so confident, like they're not. He's like, how do you know? It's like, because if they were, we'd be dead. It's like, oh, jeez.
Like, oh, okay. I guess that makes sense. But then suddenly, one does jump right out. Like they hear a skreek really close. He pulls out his machete, and then one shriek maw. What's it called? Not shriek maw. What's it called?
Night maw.
Night maw. The night maw jumps out and is right there, and
they're pretty creepy sounding. I wish we could have a picture of this still, but It's like a giant bird.
Yes.
That doesn't
It
really
reminded
fly.
me. I totally was picturing the birds from Elden Ring.
Oh,
Remember the crows and
Yes.
the blood area,
Yeah.
or whatever it's called. Or the crows everywhere. I totally was picturing
yeah.
that.
I pictured that, but they don't fly. These are like they're ground creatures. They don't. I don't think they look like
those
birds.
ones in Elden Ring didn't really. They could like glide, but
Yeah, but I mean, like they still look like birds. I always pictured them like something with a beak and four-legged.
oh, I was totally picturing the birds from Elden Ring. Because it said they're huge. It said they'd be as tall as a tree standing up, and I'm like, those birds, and
Yeah, they were.
so they're like really huge. They have a really tough hide. So he throws his machete at it, and he's like, "I gotta grab Vati. We gotta run or something." But then he hears a deafening boom,
Yes.
and then the shriek maw like falls down, and he's like, "What the f just happened?" And he sees Vati there with her tube that had a spear in it, and it turns out she loaded it with gunpowder, and essentially shot a harpoon powered by gunpowder into this bird,
Yeah.
to this maw thing. I keep forgetting what it's called. Night maw.
Yeah, Night Maw.
Night maw. I keep wanting to say shriek maw. That's a magic card.
Oh, is that one? One of these days, I think Brandon should totally. I don't know how like Lord of the Rings and Transformers and all these things got made into magic cards, but I would lose it if Brandon stuff got made into it. Like a couple of Commander decks would be like, oh my gosh, can you imagine that? Like they'll have one set from Roshar, one set from Scadrial, one set from wherever the crap else.
That would be awesome.
I'd spend
actually.
thousands of dollars.
Yeah, seriously, I would too, honestly. And it's at this part where we see we mentioned earlier that he's more like a mountain man and not like a vegetarian druid, because when she kills this maw person, Night Maw. I don't know why it's so hard for me.
I swear we need to keep like a list of all the names. We can like, oh yeah.
Is he gets really excited about it. He's like, "You can just kill it? Like holy cow, we can kill all of them. We can kill all the shadows. We can kill all of the predators." And the scientist, who's the colonizer, is like, "No, we shouldn't do that. It's going to have negative impacts on the environment." He's like, "I don't even give a crap. Like, I'll deal with whatever happens, and we got to kill all these predators."
He totally has like the ignorance also of like of people from a few hundred years ago. Like,
yeah, just kill it indiscriminately.
like
Just do whatever the heck you want.
you think of. I'm thinking of like when the Cowboys and Indians era, and who the heck were they? Settlers back in the day, and like we had the Indians here living already, but they would hunt what they needed, and they wouldn't disturb the ecosystem. But then like the settlers came and they almost hunted bison to extinction type of thing, like
and beavers.
yes, and all that stuff. They just had no concept of like if you do that, it's going to have some serious repercussions to the environment and the ecosystem and everything. He's kind of the same way, but also he's also the same way. Like I don't care. These all things need to die.
So this is like the opposite. This is like this is like the settlers showing the Native Americans guns, and the Native Americans saying, "We can kill all the animals," and the colonizers being like, "No, we shouldn't do that."
Yes, it was kind of funny how they did switch it a little bit.
Kind of a brief moment of like, okay, cool, the danger is past, but then the creature lets out this long, like moan, like this death moan, and she's like, "What's going to happen with that sound?" And he's like, "I don't know. I've never seen one of these get killed." But then they hear in the distance a bunch of other night maws are attracted to that sound.
Yes.
And he's like, "Oh crap!"
Yeah, seriously.
This is not no bueno.
It was almost like I think of again Jurassic Park.
Oh, I think we skipped a part.
I think we did, yeah. Okay, so it actually goes the Trapper, then the Death Maw.
Okay, let's talk about that now. So going back, we forgot it is important, so I do want to mention it. Right before they get attacked by the Night Maw, they stumble upon the dead body of another trapper who's by a tree called Patji's Finger.
Yes.
Which is an intense tree.
Yes.
How it works is it has these flowers, these bulb things, that when they bloom sends out a mental signal of a dying, distressed animal, and it attracts predators from miles around.
Yeah. And I wondered why that was, because it doesn't talk about it, but like, does the tree trap the animals and eat them?
Oh, it does kind of explain it a little bit. So how it works is when it attracts all these predators, the predators come in one place and then fight each other because they're predators now. All of a sudden they're all right next to each other, and they're like riled up because there's like supposedly a dead animal there. And then whatever animals die from that fight, it absorbs.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I think I just zoned out.
Yeah. And apparently this trapper got caught in that. He's kind of torn to shreds.
Yeah, looks like he'd been eaten a little bit.
Yeah. And Dusk is kind of like this poor idiot. Like, how is he stupid enough to get caught by a finger of Patji? And then he's like, oh, maybe it was just like whatever. And then he searches him with a stick because again, on the corpse, you don't know if there's something on there that'll bite you and kill you.
Yeah,
so
it seems like literally no matter how big or small something is on this island, if it bites you, you're going to die.
Yeah. So he has a stick. He searches through the pockets and he pulls out a book. And apparently every trapper has this book with them that details the location of their safe houses, the location of their AVR, and how to circumnavigate their traps. And with a short little message, just a few sentences. This guy had like 2 sentences, and Dusk thought it was wordy. It was essentially, I have a brother on this island. My name was this. These are my, and take care of my birds, rival.
Actually, this is we learned about a third island or a third place, because it does say I am first of the sky. I don't know what time of day the sky was, but whatever. Taken by Patji at last. I have a brother on Suluko. Care for them, rival.
Yeah. And then Vati's like, care for his brother? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
He's talking about his birds.
So maybe Suluko is not another place, actually.
I think he did just say that. He was like, I have a brother over here.
Or maybe it was just like, I have a brother on Suluko. New topic. Care for them, rivals.
Yeah.
So he doesn't bother mentioning like, oh, and I've got birds. Care for them. Care for them, rivals. Okay, now I'm remembering.
And then he kind of explained that even though they have an intense rivalry, they would rather someone take care of their birds than that, because he says birds accustomed to humans rely on them and may not survive.
Yes, and this is where we learn where we talk about what we mentioned earlier, or where it talks about what we mentioned earlier. That Vati says, "Oh, I always heard that trappers are incredibly territorial." And he's like, "We are," and he kind of talks about more about how they work. Like, better to have your rivals take care of your birds than let them die, and blah blah blah. And then she's like, "Well, anyway," he just says, it is our way." And then this is where she says, "That's an awful excuse." And I'm like, it's true. It's so stupid.
So yeah, then after that is when
when they get attacked.
The
by the
Nightmare comes. They shoot it with the harpoon gun, and then they hear other night moths coming, and they do it kind of. They have to go fast. They can't go slow anymore, so they're kind of trotting, almost running. They're going one direction, and then they're like, "We're not going to make it." And then Dusk is he's like upset. He's like, "Oh, that means we have to go this other way, which is going to take us to like some mountain and a stream and water, and apparently there's a big secret there, and we don't know what the secret is, although we kind of mentioned it earlier." So they're running. They find out they're not going to escape the night moths, and so he has to change course and go to the nearest stream to wash away their scent. And the nearest stream happens to lead to this big area where a lot of birds roost, and there's several fingers of Patji there. And he leads Vati there and kind of half hopes that she won't notice all the birds in the area, but she does. And she notices, she's like, why are all these birds here? They're all these juvenile birds. And then he finally just spills the beans. He's like, in order for birds to get talents, they have to come to this very place on Patji to get the ability to give talents. And she's like, what?
Yeah.
And she's like, how? And he's like, he kind of glances down, and then she notices that the fruit, these buds that the fingers of Patji do, are half eaten. She's like, the fruit? And he's like, no, worms. And she's like, a parasite? There's a parasite. So apparently there's a parasite in the fruit that the birds eat that give the birds powers. And she's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, freaking A. And then he's like, and she's like, I can't die with this knowledge. Like, they're still coming. Our trick didn't work. They're coming, and now we're trapped in this little gully area. And she's like, I got to escape. And he's like, you're not going to escape. And he decides he's going to sacrifice himself. And so he's going to run out. But as he's running, him and Vati kind of at the same time realize there's a different way to do it.
In order to escape, he gets one of the flowers from these trees, the ones that project the dying mental signal of an animal. He puts it on this spear, the last spearhead that Vati has.
Yeah.
And they light that, another deafening boom, and they shoot that petal off into the distance, however far that goes.
Yeah.
And the predators go after it, so they get away from the rest of those nightmare creatures.
And then, hooray! But now the secret's exposed. The company now is going to know how the birds get their power, where they have to go to get their power, and then it doesn't have to only be AVRs. It can be any bird, essentially. They can go there and get a parasite.
So they once they escape the predators, the night moths. Yes.
They make it to the fort.
I like how he describes it. Well, in his little first one, it's like a horribly impressive sight.
Yes, it smells like a city, and he hates it.
Yes.
It's noisy, and he hates it. And a bunch of people rush out, and it turns out Vati is very important. They call her Lady Vati,
yes.
So apparently she's some type of nobility, or at least some higher up in the company. And they realized they didn't activate the machine, they just opened it.
Yes.
And just the very act of opening in the machine caused the birds to freak out like they did, so they haven't even turned it on yet.
Can't imagine what would actually happen. Well, I guess what Dusk saw is they're all going to die if you turn the machine on.
Yes, and so Dusk kind of goes into this panic, and he's having a hard time articulating himself. I kind of imagine him stuttering, and he's essentially yelling, "Is like, don't do it! Don't do anything! It's a trap!" And Vati's kind of ignoring him. She's surrounded by people, and so he tries to run towards her, but then one of the soldiers shoots an arrow and a warning shot at him, and so he's like, "Oh, and then he's like, don't do it!" And she's like, "I promise, you can't stop progression," is what she essentially says again. But I think she also makes like a promise. She's like, "I promise I'll be gentle" or something. But then the gate's closed. And no matter how much he yells, he's like, "Bring her back. I need to talk to her. Bring her back. I need to talk to her." They just ignore him until he goes back into the woods, and he's really upset.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Freaking A." He's like, "Don't they see this is a trap? Like these sky people." I'm gonna call them sky people, like in Avatar. They're no good. They're not trying to help us. He realizes that it's a trap. They're trying to make it so these people have just enough technology to trade with so that they can come and exploit them. And he realizes it, but he wasn't able to articulate it. But then all of a sudden Sock gets up and flies away, which we didn't talk about this, but she was injured somehow, and it's hard for her to fly.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "What the crap? Where are you flying to?" I think he said 10 feet flying is hard for her.
Yeah.
So she flies away, and he's like, "What the F?" And he follows her, and she goes back to the fort, and Vati's out there. And she lands on Vati's shoulder, and then Vati says, when they opened the machine, they found a manual that explained exactly how to use the machine, exactly the theory behind it. Uh-huh. And then she realized, then she had that, then she held up the feather of the trap that she fell into, and she had like an epiphany, and she was like, "They're trying to trap us, aren't they?" And he's like, "Yes." And she's like, "Dang it! Like, what do we do? Like, we can't fight these people."
Yeah, that'd be really hard to fight.
Yes, and then Dusk is kind of like, "No, Patji's prepared us for this. He's given us all these trials. He's taught us how to be careful, and we know how to do this." And he's like, "We're going to gather all the trappers, and we're going to do something." And then she's like, "Yeah," and then they go back into the fort, and that's where the story ends. So
they were holding hands.
Oh, they were?
Yes.
Oh.
That's the last sentence. Dusk took Vati's hand and stepped into the fortress anyway.
Oh. We don't know what's going to happen with this world. The postscript kind of mentions that this wasn't a planned part of the Cosmere, and kind of came apart as part of like a brainstorming session, and kind of evolved into being kind of an add-on. Maybe there will be more in the future. He didn't give any specific promises, but
yeah, that's kind of how I felt. All this stuff in here is kind of like it could be, but there's definitely no promises right now.
Yeah.
When did this even come out? Arcanum Unbounded.
A while ago.
Been a long time. Holy crap. Brandon's mind for coming up with insanely crazy stories.
Parasites in a bird that gives certain
gives
abilities.
humans certain protections and abilities. What the crap? I want to know if it goes further than that. Like, do some bird grant talents like the typical superpowers we would see, like someone gets super strong because they got a bird sitting on their shoulder?
I don't know. It would make sense that maybe, because all it says is bestow talents, and
Yeah,
it's like,
so
what talents are?
What are these talents? It's like mind reading talents. Is it just like mental stuff? Because Sock doesn't create bodies. She just shows Dusk the bodies.
Yeah, maybe it's like different type of mental abilities.
So that'd be super interesting to see. I wonder if he's got notes somewhere, or he's already come up with some, or what. But super interesting. I think the overall make of this world was kind of my favorite. Just how this world works, what its normalcies are. I just thought was super interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too. And Brandon even mentioned that he's really fascinated with Polynesian culture, with like the idea of islands and wayfinding, and that's kind of how this story came about. And you can kind of see it throughout his writing. Like, he even mentioned like the Horn Eaters, or not the Horn Eaters, or was it Horn Eaters? Yeah. Whoever Rock is.
I thought he was a Horn Eater.
He was a Horn Eater. But yeah, another slam dunk from Brandon. Short story, but it was really good.
Honestly.
I was captivating the whole time. It was not very much. It was like very quick. A lot of good intensity. Yeah. Made me want to know more.
100% makes me want to know more because it ends on a cliffhanger.
A major cliffhanger. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention is on the beach next to the fort is a dead shadow.
Oh yeah, there was so he actually gets to see one.
Yeah, it doesn't really describe it though. He just said he's like a
shadow
big,
there.
He's like a big shadow.
but he knows what it looks like. It seems like it was out of the water, not in shadow, and he's like, oh, there's a dead shadow.
Maybe it was just so big and there's nothing else it could have been.
Maybe.
Or maybe he doesn't know what they
very
look
well could have been that, yeah. But this is definitely 100% a story that I could see, like, I could see becoming like its own little series or something, because
I want to see.
There seems like there's so much more. There's like these ones from above that are living somewhere else that have much higher, much more advanced technology, and so there's a whole story about someone out there. Who are they? Maybe there's someone from some other planet we've already read about. Like maybe it's Scadrial. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? At this point, who knows? But what I want Wit to start having a bird that rides around on his shoulder. That like mocks people.
He needs like a parrot AVR or something like that. It gives him some ability, but also talks to people and like makes fun of them or something.
Yeah.
That'd be super awesome.
I think that'd be funny.
Well, anything else in this story stand out to you that was a favorite of yours?
I really like the idea. I've always liked birds. And I've always one of my dreams is to own an African gray parrot. And I think the idea of having a bird that also can grant abilities is just awesome.
Yeah.
So I think generally I just like that idea. It's just another cool idea from Brandon. But.
Definitely. That's the whole thing. It's just classic Brandon pulling out other stuff. Like, geez, it just blows me away. You even look at the writing of other authors, and it's like you can kind of see they're still like within the norm or whatever, but he's just out there. This is one thing that's going to keep me coming back to his books time and again.
Seriously, same.
All right, that was a fun one for sure.
That was a very good one.
Thanks so much, y'all, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
We hope you enjoyed it too. If you haven't read it, I'll be convinced you to read it.
Yes, definitely go check it out. Arcanum Unbounded. All the stories in here are very good. Definitely recommend all of them.
Yeah. Don't forget to head over to our Instagram. Leave us a message what you think of stuff.
Yeah.
Send us a DM.
DM. It stands for direct message. I didn't know that for the longest time.
Oh my god.
I was like, what the F is a DM? But then I learned, and now I know what it means.
Nice. Send us a DM so Jordan can know what it looks like.
Yes. Send me my first ever DM because I don't have an actual Instagram.
All right. We'll see you all in the next episode of
Into the Pages next week.
Bye.
What are we doing next week? This isn't part of the thing. It's over.